Week with Sabir. In today's hot seat is Fouad Sater. He's the co-founder and COO of OnCamp, a tech startup focused on helping companies find the best technical talent. Fouad is an accomplished entrepreneur with three previous startups, two successful exits, hundreds of hard-earned lessons through. They are hard learned, by the way, also lessons through costly mistakes. He graduated with a master's degree from HEC Paris. He is an expert in business strategy, marketing, and building great teams. Outside of work, he spends his time with his sons, reading or noodling on the guitar. He currently resides in Byblos, Lebanon.
Hi,
Fouad,
Sabir.
welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. It's an honor to be here.
So, what's interesting, dear audience, is that Fouad and I will be talking about the challenges of entrepreneurship in the Middle East. Fouad is in Lebanon, but he has operated in Saudi Arabia and maybe some other markets too.
That's
And the goal
correct.
of it is to actually share that knowledge, share the experiences and stuff like that, so that you and I will definitely banter over American entrepreneurship versus Middle Eastern entrepreneurship. I've had another episode with a very talented guest from the UK, and him and I actually discussed quite a lot about the UK entrepreneurship. And there are many differences when you go from region to region. Even within the United States, there's differences. Let
That's
alone when
correct.
you go to a different country, different political system, different economic system, and stuff like that. You're bound to come across many hurdles, and entrepreneurship takes on a very different shape, and what the expectations are. But
Certainly.
before we Fuad, dig into all those kinds of interesting topics, I want to start with first, who are you and why are we here today?
Uh, well, always difficult to answer this question. Uh, we're here. The second one is easier. So we're here to talk about business and hopefully to add value to our listeners. Share some of the experiences of these hard lessons, especially if they've been costly. Most of them. I'm sure you've had quite a few. Um, and
Fuad, I
you
would say, Fuad, I would say, I call them deep scars and a lot of follicles on my head. Loss of follicles from my head.
awesome. Yes, indeed. Yeah, you can already see the disappearing hairline. Well, I think first and foremost, I'm a father and a family man, um, and that's what drives me every day to to go out and build companies and build businesses. And I'm also professionally a builder. I like to build things. I like to solve problems, and uh, that's certainly in my DNA. It's been there since childhood, since high school, since trying to sell basketball cards in high school and stuff like that. Uh, I like to solve problems. I like to build things, and I found that the best medium for me to do that was business, and hopefully that will resonate with a lot of people.
So, if you can kind of go back to the first moment in your life when you saw that, you know, you may not have even called it a business, because you were so
Yeah,
young.
yeah, yeah.
What is that? What was that moment like? When did you realize that this could be something that you could explore? This being business.
Well, the first experience, but I certainly didn't think that that is something I could expand or explore further. I didn't think of it as a business. Was buying basketball posters for about a little bit over $1 back in Saudi Arabia, where I also attended school, and selling it at a 300% markup for about $3-4 at school. And I would basically roll the posters and put them under
in
my
your
shirt
backpack.
or in my backpack because I wasn't allowed to take them in, and try and find creative ways to bring them into school. But I think, yeah, so in a few weeks, I was already making a good profit, and my dad was supportive enough to take me back to buy more posters, given that I showed the that the capital has grown, and
Uh,
I'm back with returns. Eventually, in a few weeks, some of the older kids figured out that they could just beat me around and take them for free, and I had to shut that business down. So
how old were you? Was this like a secondary school or high school age,
that
or
was
earlier?
probably earlier, maybe like sixth grade. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, toward the end of middle school, right before high
It
school.
Now, how old are you now?
I'm 39 this November.
Okay, 39. So sixth grade would be what, about 6 plus
12,
5, so
11.
11, 12 years old,
Yeah.
right? If you were to go back to that 12-year-old kid who has this enthusiasm around basketball posters and bringing it to school and selling it and so on and so forth, what advice would you give that 12-year-old self if you had a time machine to go back?
Well, that's tactical advice. Find a partner from high school who could provide protection.
That's really smart. That's smart. You didn't have an elder brother?
No, unfortunately not.
Okay.
But yeah, if I
So
would
you needed
be,
muscle. You needed
I
muscle
needed
to.
muscle. I needed muscle. The old-fashioned way. That's the way things rolled in school.
Yeah. So but besides that, from a purely business perspective, right? Uh, what advice would you give them? I
Yeah.
mean, I'm guessing that you're selling these things because you meet your classmates in school. That's where the attention is. So that's where you're selling your stuff. Did you explore selling those things outside of on a weekend, selling it to your friends so that it was not necessarily, you didn't have the boundaries you had?
That's yeah, yeah. Well, I think one advice I would give is to uh, not only follow products of passion. I really love basketball, but it was a fringe game in Saudi Arabia, and while it had audience in my school, it didn't have much, influence outside of school. So I would have probably made more money if I listened to people who were interested in football, soccer,
Hmm.
and uh, looked into product offerings for them. But what I would give, to a 12-year-old me, something would that I would understand at that age is, uh, focus on learning from these experiences. Focus on building up your skills, and look into something that can slowly grow, even if it's not going to be very big, but it can slowly grow, and keep at it, even at 12.
No, I totally agree with that, because I think the lessons you learn in business, whether you're 12, 21, or 85, the lessons you learn, no amount of like an MBA degree from Harvard or Oxford or Yale ever going to teach
Yeah,
you that, ever,
or 100 books.
or read
Yeah,
100 books.
yeah,
When you go through that experience, it's like, you mentioned football. It's like the folks, American public loves American football, right? Every Sunday
that's
they're
correct.
glued to the TV. But the thing is, it was one thing sitting behind that TV and yelling at the players that, oh, you should have thrown that, or the quarterback, what is he doing, right? But it's another thing when you're getting tackled by a 350-pound ball that's gonna
Yeah,
crush you down. That's a
that's
very
correct.
different feeling, very different in
Yeah,
my opinion.
yeah,
And when
yeah,
you're running a business, I think getting those learnings, and one of the things I advice I give to a lot of young entrepreneurs: learn as much as you can and as early as you can.
That's
Make
correct.
mistakes, make as many mistakes as you can. Because the thing is, when you are 19 or 20 or 21 and you're
You can
starting
afford
out,
it.
make the mistake. That's it. You'll recover from it, but you don't want to make that mistake when you're 55,
That's right.
because it would
That's
be it
right.
would be a lot harder for you to recover from. I know that people do live to 85 and 90 and 100, but the thing is, it becomes a lot harder at 55 than it is at 19 or 18, right? The more you learn about setting prices, setting promotions, finding the right audience, you just mentioned audience there, right? it's
That's
it's
true.
key. It's key. But the throwback I'll give you on that would be, if everybody else is selling soccer related or football, right, Middle Eastern football related gear or posters, that means that that $1 you bought something for and you sold it for $3, it's possible that that dollar would be $1.75 if it's a soccer product,
That's true, but you could potentially have more volume, and so
Yeah.
there's only the real field is what gives you correct feedback, like testing things out, and the real market and figuring out what the results are, data.
So you start going through this, right? You're at 12, you're selling these posters, and you decide, you know what, I need to shut this down because the kids are going to beat me up and take my flyers away. I'm going to lose money. So you stop that. But I'm sure that that itch never goes away, by the way. So I'm sure that
No,
you
it
kept
does
on
not.
doing different things. Uh,
Yeah,
so from there, you're still paying attention, hopefully paying attention to your studies. You finish up because you end up at
to some
HEC
extent.
Paris, right? Yeah, that's from Saudi Arabia. You went to
No,
Paris to
no.
continue
I took
studying.
a long break from studying, and I did not go straight to university. So I went back to study in around 2008, 2009.
Oh wow. Okay.
And yeah, I did a couple of years on an associate degree, uh, and uh, dropped it while I was starting my first business. I then went into HEC Paris for a master's degree in 2020. Uh,
Good
so it
timing.
was, yeah, COVID.
Something
Lots
happened
of
in
focus.
2020
Yeah, yeah.
with
Great,
global impact.
great, time to be at home focusing on something.
Studies.
Yeah, studies. Um, and I went in there with an with a more mature mindset and an eagerness to learn. Uh, I I got a lot out of it. Much more on the people front because I've made a lot of genuine connections, great friends. My co-founder, Patel, the CEO of On Camp right now, was my classmate on that batch, and that's where we started this idea. Uh, but it does not compare in any way to the lessons you learn uh, when when you start a business.
So you're going through all these like life experiences, right? Um, Somehow that leads you to HAC. You make a decision. Okay, I'm gonna continue my studies. What was that? Because you come across many different things in life, right? Sometimes it's just too many things going on. You say, okay, you know what, I'm gonna hit the reset button. I'm gonna pause. I need to go do this. It's gonna take my mind off of this other stuff that's happening. I'm going to focus on this. Well, let me see what comes off of it. I think, in your case, the great value I would say is you finding your co-founder.
Yes,
That's
that's true. That's true.
you're in
Yeah,
Saudi Arabia or Lebanon, and here we go. It's
he's in San
HEC
Francisco.
Paris. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Well, I couldn't have said it better. I think you. Now I'll have to paraphrase you. Um, I was at a point in life where I've gone through different businesses. I've gone through uh, a lot of good times and a lot of difficult times, and I needed to press that mental reset button. I needed to find to get out of the comfort zone and learn to do something new. I didn't want to keep the same hat on. Uh, and I've often attempted different things and new things during both my professional career and my personal life. But, you could get stuck in a rut in business as an entrepreneur, and so that was my way of finding, a way out of that rut.
Yeah, I mean,
It seems to have worked out.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with that. I mean, I work with entrepreneurs on a regular basis, like at least 4 at a time right now, And one of the biggest things that I try to get the founder of the company or the entrepreneur that's running the company, they could have a different role in the company, is to get out of their own way. And most of it has to do with this.
Yes.
It's in your,
It's mental.
it's all in, it's mental, it's in your head. Oh, this person said this and that. No, first we need to clear that up, right?
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
you cannot accomplish anything, whether it's me or Gary Vee or anybody else or Tony Robbins. You're not going to get anything out of it, right? You have to get out of your own way. And
That's
sometimes
true.
that also means that not only are they getting in their own way, they're getting in the way of all the employees that are actually doing the work because of their mindset. It's actually getting in their way too,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
that's why that company is stuck in a rut. And that's one of the biggest things that I see. And so what I do is, I don't know if you've ever worked on as to fix a fan or air conditioning.
I have.
Sometimes you have to move it really fast, like out of control, to get rid of any kind of junk or dust or anything that's stuck in there. With every company that I work with, the very first week that I work with them, I put everybody through the motion. I want to see where the problem areas are.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's the founder, sometimes it's the worker, sometimes the founder says the right thing and they want things accomplished, but the worker is not they don't have the right skill set, right? But they're just not being honest that they don't have the skill set. They say, yes boss, I'll do that for you. They have no business touching that stuff. So that's where you find a lot of those kinds of things. And the more and quicker that you can find those things, growth happens right after
That's
that.
correct. That's correct. Yeah. And, one thing I find important is that a lot of these problems have to do with your personal background and history and all of that, and so you have to do a lot of personal work to overcome these mental challenges that become a blocker for the company and your colleagues and your coworkers. How do you tackle that in your consultancies with your clients? Given that some of these problems could take years to.
What I find is a lot of my clients are looking for someone like me to come in because they don't have a kind of a person to go to, right? I'll give you an example. Some of the folks I work with, they may have had an amazing career somewhere else, but they always had a boss and the boss had a boss and so on and so forth, right? Supervisors, right?
Yes.
But now they own this thing, right? They are the accounting department. They are the operations department. They have to put on a hat and sign the checks to do the payroll. They have to run to the manufacturer and figure out they're missing some ingredients or supplies or something like that. They are responsible. There's no go-to. There's no one that they can fire off an email to go and say, go fix that for me. Or, hey, marketing department, you're doing a horrible job selling my product and you're from sales. That's what most people are used to, right? There's always somebody else to blame, right?
Yeah.
Or somebody else who will take care of that thing. But when you own your own business, you are it. You are every one of those things. And one of the things I say is when you point your finger at someone like this, one finger is pointing towards someone, one is blaming God up there. The other 3 is blaming you.
Yes.
You see these 3 other? You see it like that?
Yeah, certainly.
You're blaming yourself, right?
Certainly.
So let's start with the 3 fingers pointing towards you. God, he actually gives you luck. So let's leave that alone. don't blame other people. First, fix yourself, because the other three fingers, yourself, psychologically, you're pointing towards yourself.
That's
Fix
true.
that first, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So, what I do is with the founders and entrepreneurs, I stop them from that conversation, because the thing is, I've been hearing that for the past 25 years. Immediately, I know where the person is going. You need to short circuit it. You need to focus on the issue at hand. It has to do with the practical things that are going on wrong, whether it's workflow, process, maybe the wrong partner, maybe the wrong employees.
Sure.
Maybe you need to fix the cap on the bottle because all the tomato sauce is all over the place. That's what the customers are complaining about. It has nothing to do with Bob or Abdul, who's not doing their
Yes.
job. It has nothing to do with them, you know?
Or maybe you need to fire Bob, and you're not. You haven't
If
built
he's
the.
head of manufacturing and the bottle caps keep on coming off under his watch. Yep, you're
Yeah,
absolutely
and
right.
you've tried everything to get him to get his crap together, and you can't do it, and he can't own up to it. But yes, I agree with you. The the burden is on you as the leader. You take ownership and responsibility. If somebody else messes up, it's your fault. You assigned them. You either did not provide them the necessary support or the tools or guidance, you didn't explain it properly, or you chose the wrong person for the job. And so you have to take ownership of that. And I've often found that the best leaders, the best entrepreneurs, are those who take that ownership as early as possible. On the personal side, it took me like maybe 5-6 years being a serious entrepreneur to start, you know, building that.
I mean, because it takes time. And if you play any kind of sport, it takes time. You cannot go into the gymnasium, right?
yeah,
And start pumping, I don't know, 100 kilos on day one. You can't do that. You're going to break
yeah.
something.
There's a there's a uh, there's a growth path that you need to take. There's a journey that you must go through to get these scars that make you who you are.
Yep. And the more, I mean, you have success, and then you have lessons learned. I wouldn't even call them failures, right?
Yeah,
It's lessons learned. The people who call it failures tend to be the ones who have failed, who have given
and
up.
gave up. Yeah,
The term failed means that's it, I'm done.
yeah,
It's either success, unless you have failed and you want to switch to something else, but even then you're trying something different. You're still
that's
not,
true.
you're experimenting with something different. You've not failed. So, I mean, when you're running a business, you have to think about, okay, you know what? I did this, it was successful. How can I do more of it so I can get more success? These other things I did, it didn't work. I need to change the parameters. And if you can remove yourself, when I say self, I mean ego, a lot of ego.
Yes, yes, certainly,
If you remove
certainly.
your ego from the equation and think more very practically, very scientifically, and say, okay, this is what we are testing, this is what our desired results are supposed to be, and this is what, if we get the desired results, we're going to do more. If we don't get it, well, how can we modify the parameters, of our test in order to learn more or learn a different thing?
Yeah, be driven by the data, by the actual facts. Um, you know, I often hear stories of companies making massive revenues and still making losses, and that's really such a shame because you're making revenues because somebody wants your service or your product, and you have some sort of product market fit.
Mhm.
Otherwise, nobody would buy anything from you. Um, but you know, you're making losses because you're not keeping that machine optimized, and you're and often these organizations are ran like political organizations instead of businesses instead of companies.
That's why it's called corporate bureaucracy.
Yeah, yeah,
That's the term for it.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Now, let me change gear a little bit, right? Because everything that we discussed,
Sure.
these are definitely valuable advice for any entrepreneur, whether they're in Lebanon or New York.
Yeah, yeah,
Definitely applies to it. I would like to jump into some assumptions about entrepreneurship in the Middle East, right? Now, being an American, being a New Yorker, if I want to establish a company or 50 companies, I can set up all of those LLCs and S corps and C corps, right? Those are the popular
yeah,
types
yeah.
of entities in the United States. I can do it this afternoon. It will take me an hour to set up 50 companies, right?
Online.
Online. I don't have to even talk to anyone. All I need
Yeah,
is my credit card, and boom, I'm 50 of them. Not only will I get my these corporations set up, I can also register them for trademark, and I can also go and get my domain names for all the websites I want to build, right?
yeah,
I can
yeah.
do it in one sitting in one afternoon. Like, it will take
Yeah,
me maybe 2 3 hours. Like, if I
yeah.
start at 2 p.m., 5 p.m., I'm all set. Tomorrow morning I'm gonna start selling something, I guess, right?
True, true. And
So
you can
that's
set
how
up
it.
a bank account online as well now.
Yep.
Yeah,
In I can get a temporary, what's called an federal ID,
yeah.
federal EIN number,
EIN,
employer
yeah,
ID number. It's like a social security number in the
for a
United
company.
States, but for companies. And then once I get that, I can go and open up 50 accounts. That I might do it the next day on my to-do list. 50 accounts, I can do that.
Yeah,
So that's in America. There are a lot of facilities and a lot of assumptions also about how easy it is to set up a company. If you want to get a product going, that's pretty easy too, right? There are a lot of facilities and easiness into getting things done uh, for an entrepreneur to accomplish things very quickly, especially in 2022, right?
yeah, certainly.
The narrative and the rant I just had, if you were to paraphrase me but change
Yeah.
everything into Saudi Arabia, Lebanon, Dubai, I don't know if you've lived those places like Qatar, Kuwait, other places like that.
I'm familiar with the legal structures of most of them, so yeah, I can dig into that. Let's start with Saudi Arabia because that's where I have my longest professional experience, and you know, while there've been a lot of progress made and the process is much easier, it's not as simple or as straightforward as it is. Uh, the thing is, there's a lot to be done to set up a company in Saudi Arabia or a sole proprietorship. In the US, you don't even need to register sole proprietorships. You just get an EIN. In Saudi Arabia, most people go for what is called an establishment. So basically, it's sort of like a sole proprietorship. It does not provide you a limited liability, so the liability is on the founder. You're not allowed to have more partners. It's just you, and that's the easiest thing to set up. But it still takes weeks for a citizen to get a company or an
A Saudi
establishment, a
citizen.
Saudi citizen. Now,
Okay.
for a foreigner or for a foreign company trying to establish a subsidiary in Saudi Arabia, they have to go through a different legal entity called the Saudi Arabian uh, Foreign Investment Authority. I think they changed the name recently, but that's the entity responsible for foreign investment in Saudi Arabia.
Are these like
And
trade zones and free trade zones? Are there
no,
places
not
like that?
yet. Not yet. I think they've been working on something. It hasn't been rolled out, as far as I know. May have happened, months ago, and I haven't heard about it. But so far, there are no trade zones or free trade zones that provide legal entities in Saudi Arabia. Though what I know is they're in process of building them. So it would take you. Uh, back when I was working, at least, so and up to 5 or 6 years ago, it would take you at least a year to get a trade license, and cost something like $30,000 or $40,000 if you get approved. And the requirements for approval were very high for non-Saudis, or for foreign businesses, or for non-Saudis getting into partnerships with Saudis as well. The process would at least go through 5 or 6 different ministries or the departments, as you'd say in the U.S. Um, and you need to get different approvals from them and go back to the authority that's supposed to issue your license. And after you do that, you know you don't get the full permit. You go rent an office, and you hire a Saudi legal representative, and then you show proof that you've done that, uh, and you get the permit. And you renew that yearly. The renewal fees vary from one type of business operation to another. For most construction and engineering related businesses, a few years ago, it was about $18,000 a year. So, that's quite a setback for somebody trying to start a business. In the Emirates, it's easier. It's more straightforward. It's faster, but it's still a few $1,000s a year. It's not as straightforward as the US or as the UK, for instance. You would still need to, you can set up a company in the UAE right now from New York, but you still have to fly in there at some point to finalize the last few things on the paperwork and set up a bank account. It's going to set you back between 3 and 6K dollars a year, depending on the legal zone you set up in. And in most cases, you're not allowed to do business inside the UAE. You're basically building an offshore company to trade outside. But if you're doing that to operate inside the UAE, you need additional licenses, and then you're subject to more taxation. And of course, there are restrictions for certain types of businesses that you cannot.
So, what sort of businesses in UAE you would set up? Would you set up like manufacturing to manufacture the goods, but it's not meant to be for the local population? You're exporting it out to the other markets, nearby markets, other countries, and stuff like that.
That's quite a common thing.
Okay.
There are also massive distribution centers or redistribution hubs, processing, let's say, facilities that do packing and from bulk stuff into smaller packages, and then distribute them to other Middle Eastern markets and all the way into Europe. It's also much cheaper to set up something in the UAE versus, let's say, in France. And so,
Yeah.
if you're going to have a hub that to serve multiple markets, it might also be even more advantageous if you're trading with China and India, having direct port access from the other side, and then trading into the Middle East and Europe from here.
Yeah,
So
the Dubai port is extremely busy
oh yes,
because of that.
They've designed. They built a strategy before building that port to make it a central trade hub. Not just the Dubai port, they have a few other ports in the UAE that are supporting that. And they've been quite successful at it, to be honest. In terms of ease of doing business, if you're planning to do anything that has to do with the Middle East, I would say the first place to look would be the UAE.
Yeah, perfect. I'm not planning anything yet, but that's good to know, because I did see that. I don't know if you follow Kevin O'Leary from Shark Tank on social. I think 2 weeks ago, or 2 or 3 weeks ago, he became an Emirati citizen.
Cool.
Yeah.
I
I don't
know
know
he
what
has.
I don't know what that means, but I guess because of his level of investment in the country that he was given that. So I don't know what that means, but yeah, that's
It could
something
be
that
his
I found
watch
it to be.
collection.
Huh?
It could be his watch collection. You
No,
know,
just
he's
a
a
watch
huge
collection, right?
collector of what his watch collection is probably worth enough to get him citizenship rights in several
He loves his
countries.
watch collection, definitely.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, now that you have had three businesses, you're working on your fourth one right now.
Yes.
Out of those three businesses that you already had, how many of them in what countries did you have them in?
I had them in, two of them were, well, three of them in Saudi Arabia. One of these businesses also had branches in the US and the United Kingdom.
Oh, you did. Okay. In Saudi Arabia, Saudi Arabia is a pretty big country.
Yeah.
What parts did you have it in?
In Jeddah,
Okay.
and we operated across the whole kingdom. So I don't know a name of a city that I haven't been to.
In Saudi Arabia.
Yeah, yeah.
Wow.
I've been to most places that most Saudis haven't been to. On the borders of Iraq, on the borders of Yemen, anywhere you can imagine.
Yeah, I mean, Jeddah seems to be a pretty popular city.
It
But
is.
yeah, it's very popular. I think one of the international airports is there, in addition to Riyadh, which is the capital.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what about the other business? You said two of them were in Saudi Arabia. One, you said where? In Lebanon?
No, one of them was in Saudi Arabia, as well as New Jersey, Elizabeth, not too far from you, where the
Yep.
industrial areas
Yep. Very
are.
familiar with Elizabeth, New
Yeah,
Jersey. Yep.
yes, sir. And another branch was right outside London.
Oh wow. Very cool.
Yeah.
And the fourth one now?
The fourth one now is headquartered in San Francisco, United States. My co-founder is based there, but we're fully remote. Our current initial market is India, so we're a fully distributed team.
Oh, very cool. And you work out of Lebanon.
I work out of Lebanon right now, at least, but I've done quite some traveling this year.
And
The
how
US
hard is
is.
it? I mean, based on all of the different countries we just mentioned, um, how hard is it to set up a business in Lebanon compared
Oh
to
yeah.
what you just said about Saudi Arabia?
Yeah, that's a tricky question. It depends.
I mean, by the way, I am, to just clarify, I'm asking a very loaded question right now. Given in 2022, currently, I think the crisis started in Lebanon about, I think in 2021, late
Yeah,
2020,
yeah, yeah.
with economic crisis, power crisis. I mean, there have been a lot of political crisis also
That's
in
correct.
Lebanon. Uh, so I'm sure that it's a moving target.
It is.
So just to kind of give us some color into just the business aspect of it, setting up a business, and how do you operate around, if you're working on computers, how do you operate around power outages? That's a very practical. When power
Yeah,
goes out in New York, I mean, first of all, it doesn't go out in New York, but if it ever goes out in New York,
chaos.
it's chaos. I'm just sitting in my backyard barbecuing. That's it, because I can't do anything.
Yeah,
Everything I do is online. So if you don't have power, I don't have internet, I cannot do anything. I can just sit
yeah,
around and self-reflect.
yeah. I think the latter question is going to have quite a few entrepreneurial answers to it. So I'll hold on to that. But setting up a business in Lebanon under normal circumstances is not very straightforward, but it's doable. The rules, the laws are clear. It's much more difficult right now because a lot of these governmental entities and departments are operating at something like 10 or 15% capacity. So whatever I'm talking about applied 2 years ago. I don't know how fast things are now, but you could, roughly do the same thing. It would just take 5 times longer. You could get a sole proprietorship registered in a few weeks. If you don't want to do that, you can get something like an EIN uh, and operate under your own name, but you'll be able to build bill customers with VAT invoices, invoices with taxes, and so that makes your life easier. Setting up a company is more complex, and it requires the use of a lawyer, and it has certain filing requirements. You are required to have an office. At some points in time, they've made some facilitation around that, allowing you to register your place of residence as a business place as well. And I suppose that still works for most types of small businesses or very small businesses, but it's not advisable. The way you would do it is get a small office, not a shared office. You can't do that. You need to have your own lease agreement and that, or a small shop, and set up a company based on that. So but what I know is closing down a business is the hectic part, not setting it
Not
up.
opening
That would
it.
take not opening it. That would take like months and months, possibly over a year.
Yeah, I mean, actually, business banking, business loans is a very interesting topic depending on the region of the world you're in, right? If you own in certain regions, like in the United States, the business loans are secured by the business and its assets and stuff like that. In
Yeah,
some regions, you cannot secure it with the business assets. It's you as the founder. You
that's
personally,
right.
if
Yes,
anything
sir.
happens, you're liable for that business loan. That even though you're using it for your business, you're liable for it. You have to pay it. So that loan never goes away,
That's
right?
true.
Even if you bankrupt the company, it doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter. Yeah, yeah. I think that applies to most places in the Middle East. Uh, yeah, I would say it applies to most countries in the Middle
How
East. I'm
how
not
how
sure.
easy is it to hire, like a let's say whether you want to use Saudi Arabia or Lebanon, a local Lebanese citizen or a Saudi citizen in Saudi Arabia versus hiring a foreigner?
It's well, let's take Saudi Arabia first. It's much easier to hire a local citizen and much cheaper. In Saudi, you have restrictions around quotas of foreigners that you can hire. There are certain professions for which you cannot hire uh, non-Saudis, uh, and it's
What
very
sort of roles?
expensive. So
For
let's
example, for your company, what roles have to be Saudi citizens versus not?
It was a constantly changing list, but as last I remember, HR was required to be Saudi. They were in the process of implementing the requirement of accountants being Saudi as well. Any sort of legal representation or government liaisoning would be Saudis. Um, and there were other professions as well that you could not hire a non-Saudi for, in an effort to decrease the unemployment rate of Saudis in Saudi Arabia.
And what about foreigners, to hire foreigners from who are, whether they're in the country or outside the country?
It's easier if they're in the country and their paperwork is clean. They don't have any problems with their previous employers. It's a little expensive. You'd spend back then about $1,800 to transfer that person's sponsorship from the existing company to yours. Um,
Oh,
it's something like an H-1B, but the sponsor has control over your visa, and so whenever they want you out, if they don't want to let you go to another company, they can basically cancel your visa. So yeah,
yeah.
it's a
Yeah, I mean, if
it's
I
a
work for one company and if I want to go to, because of my skill set, I want to go to a competing company, my
yeah, they
boss could
can.
like literally cancel my visa and send me home.
Yeah. I think that changed very recently in Saudi Arabia, maybe about a year or two ago. They've set up a lot of restrictions on that, and
Mm.
they set it up in a way where there is no longer a sponsor per se. You have an employer for which you have a contract, with which you have a contract, but you cancel that contract, you have the right to seek a contract with someone else. So yeah, the progress has been made there.
Yep. I mean, I've
Yeah.
been watching and listening to quite a lot of changes that are going on. I mean, very interesting projects also. First, from you would hear quite a lot from Dubai, for example, Dubai and UAE, a lot of interesting
Mm.
projects, architectural projects, world's largest, world's biggest, world's tallest buildings, all of those worlds,
Yes.
whatever is kind of trademarked by UAE. They own a lot of those
Yeah.
kind of properties and architectural wonders. I've been to Dubai before.
Yes. It's
And similarly, right now, I see very similar to that in Saudi Arabia. There are a lot of interesting projects going on right now with the current leadership and stuff like that. There's a lot of changes going on. Everything from, I mean, the latest project is the line. I don't know if you
I
follow.
have I have a Neom. Yes.
Yeah, it's a
Yeah.
it's a very interesting. Yeah, it's a very interesting project to me. I always wonder about architectural buildings and architecture and stuff like that. So to me, I find that to be a very very phenomenal project. We'll see how it turns out and comes to life. Uh, to
Yeah.
uh, to seeing a sport that I love. I love wrestling, and I've been watching it since
Yeah.
I was a kid. To see that Hulk Hogan goes to Saudi Arabia for a pay-per-view event for WWE in Saudi Arabia.
Oh yeah.
That's a phenomenal change. That's an incredible change.
Well, it's a
You
pretty
know,
big sport in Saudi, by the way. Most people don't know that. Like, people love wrestling, especially I would say our generation.
yeah,
Um, yeah, they spent a lot of time watching WWF back then,
yep,
WWE now,
yeah.
and yeah, it's a massive thing there, and it's quite a remarkable change, to be honest. Yes.
Yep. I mean that those are the kind of things that I kind of follow and I find it phenomenal. Any culture that goes through that sort of a transformation, I think it's interesting. Are there pros and cons of it and negative and positives? Every
For
culture
sure.
does. I mean, if you saw what happened in the United States, a
I
year
did.
ago, and this is the beacon of democracy here. So
Yes.
every country has its. I mean, there is no such thing as like pure to form. I mean, there's always something to be said.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, one thing, the facilities we were talking about, that things that I have access to in the United States, right? First of all, I mean, I'll reiterate what Warren Buffett has said. Uh, he goes like, I'm the luckiest person in the world because I was born in the United States. I'm white male. That makes me very lucky, let alone
Yes.
all the other skill sets like investing and finding amazing companies. But to
Yes.
him, he won the lottery on those three things. One of the things I can say is like being in the United States is so easy for me to find a mentor, right? I have a mentor, and I also mentor other entrepreneurs. I teach at a local university here. I'm a professor also. So I also mentor those kids and I teach them. I'm their professor. In the past, I was part of to give back. As part of my time, I was mentoring a lot of college students as a volunteer service.
Yes.
So that kind of an ecosystem exists. It's very easy for me to tap into it. Anybody could tap into it. They just have to know the type of a mentor that they're looking for, and then they can figure out and network their way into getting that mentor, right? How does that culture differ when it comes to Lebanon or Saudi Arabia? Who was your mentor? Have you mentored other entrepreneurs or students or so on? No, tell me,
Yeah.
shed
Yeah.
some light into that.
Well, look, quite honestly, I don't think I've had a mentor, even an informal one. But I did have, the luck to work with a lot of people who were, uh, you know, you know, very skilled and very successful at what they're doing, and managed to just get enough exposure and try and learn from them. I'd like to, take this moment to mention one of my first bosses, Dr. Fouad in Saudi Arabia. I worked for him at a very young age in a marketing role, and he gave me this advice. So he had a nice library like this one in his office, and he said, "Look, read." I asked him, "How can I get better at doing this?" He said, "Read, read as much as you can, and then execute." And he gave me access to books because he had them, and I could borrow books and bring them back to the office. And from that, I got most of my mentors, most of them being in books. I've also had some negative mentors, basically people who did terrible things in front of me, like they made terrible mistakes, and I learned what not to do
Oh,
from
your eyes
their
were open
mistakes.
to know that they were
Yes,
making a mistake.
yes, and I'm like,
Okay.
oh no, like, well, and sometimes I was thinking, I thought, well, this could work, but turns out it didn't. And yeah, I
I
learned
mean, you
from
have to.
that.
There's an advice in that. Sometimes the people that you believe should be giving you good advice or good consult, they might be flawed themselves, right? So
Certainly,
take
certainly.
it, take it as a data point. That's it.
Yeah,
Leave it to
yeah.
that data point, and then test it. Test the
Yes.
theory. Take everything as a thesis, not as a law.
Yeah, 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 yeah. And test the assumption.
Yeah. Otherwise, you could. They're giving you advice as free advice. You
Yeah,
could be burning your funds
that's true.
and your
And,
time.
and and I'd also like to add one thing. It's in many cultures across the world. I mean, certainly, I don't know. It's not the same everywhere in the U.S., but it's in certain places around. Let's say New York, Boston, maybe of course the West Coast, Silicon Valley area. Uh, the 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 culture of mentorship and providing advice and giving access to people and time to people is very mature, and I can say the same thing about that across the Middle East. It's sometimes very difficult to access people, to get access to certain people. I've had more success getting calls with famous VCs in the United States and lining up meetings and getting advice from them, even though I was not, let's say, doing a raise, but getting professional advice, readiness, and that sort of stuff. I've had more success there in setting up certain meetings with key decision makers who are less known, let's say in Lebanon or in Saudi Arabia. Access is a much more difficult thing
Why
around
do
these
you think
areas.
that exists? Is it the kind of the culture or the ecosystem just doesn't exist, or is there something deeper there?
I think there's a lot of ego involved, to be honest. This is my frank opinion. There's a lot of the ecosystem does not exist of mentorship, and also the difficulty of access has to do a lot with ego, because simply a lot of folks don't feel that they need to give back into society.
But do people also seek out that help, or does it go the other way too? That I'm too egotistical to ask for help, and on the other side of it, well, I'm too egotistical to provide help.
That's that's that's
This
uh,
person is not
that's
worth my
pretty.
time.
That's actually the way it goes. Yeah, in a lot of places, and of course, when I talk about these cases, it's the typical thing according to my experience. And of course, there are people across the spectrum. There are a lot of people who do mentorship. It's more mature now across the Middle East as a philosophy. I've seen a lot of efforts, especially in Saudi Arabia, given that there's a huge push for building startups and stuff like that. And so I see that uh, starting. There's more of that happening in Lebanon too. And so I think there's positive change, but it's still a different mindset, a different mentality, and a lot of uh, market maturity to be acquired.
So in your bio that I read off, right, it said
Yeah.
that you've had hundreds of hard-earned and hard-learned lessons, right? I
Yes.
mistakenly said that. That was a Freudian slip, but it is a hard-learned lessons too.
Yes, sir.
So given that, given the fact that you've had three of these companies in the Middle East that you have exited now, or are you still owning it, or do you moved on from
No,
those three?
I'm done.
Moved on, and now you're working on number four. Given
Yes.
this set of four experiences that you've had, pretty solid experiences in Middle East, what were some of those? What was the highest hard lesson that you learned? The number
Well,
one.
the number one, take take partnerships very seriously. They're like marriages, and deliberate on them. Make sure you have the proper paperwork in place. Make sure you have something like a vesting agreement. Don't jump into the opportunity because of your excitement, because that would be very costly, and that certainly cost me a lot of money. Uh, you know, human nature always prevails. You can bet on that. Make sure that you have the systems, the framework in place that can protect you in case somebody doesn't deliver, or in case things change, or in case somebody decides they want to exit a business, or simply do something else, or they underperform. And so make sure you have that. That could be a costly mistake. Uh, Not a mistake, but I would also say set up your businesses in places that are favorable for long-term success. So, to follow the Warren Buffett rule. Uh, in retrospect, if I was to go back 10 years and try and set up a company, I'd go to markets that are most favorable to the business I'm trying to build. If it's tech business, I'd be, if in one of the cities in Europe that support tech, or in the Bay Area, or in New York, or in Boston, go to these hotspots where you can meet talent, and meet people, and meet, um, investors, and advisors, and mentors, and people who've actually been successful at what you're attempting.
That's well said. I think that's $1 million advice. I mean, especially with because the thing is, it comes with I can hear the hurt in your voice, as you were telling me.
Yes. Yeah.
that's not a that's not just a nice book advice. It's an actual practical advice from your background.
Yes,
But
sir. It sure cost me more than what an MBA from Harvard would have.
I mean, that's one thing that I have said to my son is that, like, some experiences that you get, I would have rather sent you to Harvard for like two times over. Would have cost me less than than what happened. What you did with that venture.
Yeah.
Because the thing is, but the other aspect of it is you don't learn those lessons.
Unless
You
you
don't
commit the
learn those lessons
mistakes.
otherwise. Unfortunately, you're gonna learn about the business strategies from Ernst and Young and
Yeah.
McKinsey and so on and so forth. But the thing is, you're reading it. It's like watching TV, watching Netflix, right?
It's like
Versus
learning
living life.
swimming from a book or from YouTube. Go ahead and learn swimming from YouTube.
Yeah,
You want to
and
learn
jump into
swimming,
the
you need to
water
get into
on the
the
deep
yeah.
end, on the deep end of the
Yeah,
swimming pool. Jump in there,
yeah,
see how practical your watching skills are.
yeah,
You know.
yeah. Yeah, and also add one piece of advice as we close. Uh, Test. You've stressed on that. Test your hypothesis. Start small. Build a simple MVP. Find a customer. Make a sale. That's how you test a business. Don't jump into nice business cards and great office space and this and this and that. These, The stuff is important, and you can get that done later. But find a product market fit, build something, test it out cheaply, and iterate from that. And that's how you build confidence and move forward.
I mean, I come across, that's such a good advice. I come across so many requests for on like Fiverr and Upwork and so many other platforms where the person starts their request for a project with, "Hey, I'm a new business owner. I would really like to create a cool logo for my business."
Yeah.
What product? Like, what are you doing? Work on that. Don't
Yes.
and get off of these. You need to work on your product first before you work on how cool your logo should be. What card stock you want to use? Like, is it too
Yes.
thick or metal or whatever for your business card? No, all of those things are
Doesn't
distractions
matter.
that are taking you away from doing the real work you need to do. I would
Yeah.
rather see on Fiverr. I have nothing against Fiverr. I love the platform. I actually use it quite a lot. Right? Get on there and say that, oh, I would like to, test out product A versus B. I would like to talk to a marketer that can help me take these two and help me set up that right test. I would love
Yeah.
that. And start with, I'm a new business owner. Okay, good.
Yes. Set up a landing page. Do some A/B testing on a couple landing pages. I think the most important pieces of the puzzle for any new business are, finding your differentiation and finding your customers. Figuring out who your niche is. And these are two very difficult things to do.
Definitely.
You can only figure them out with time and with a lot of experimentation.
Fuad, it has been a pleasure having you on the show, and
It's been
thank
a
you for
pleasure to be
dropping
on
your
here.
knowledge about Middle Eastern entrepreneurship. Thank you for sharing all those examples and the use cases. I really appreciate you being here.
Thank you very much. Thanks for giving me a platform. Always fun talking to you. Hope we can catch up soon.
Definitely, and thank you, audience members who joined us live or they're catching it on a recording. Thank you for jumping in. I love covering entrepreneurship worldwide, not just U.S. based entrepreneurship and challenges with different types of businesses. And Fuad is definitely an example of that. We're talking about. Like, we have covered UK, we have covered other countries. We have even had a Australian brand, founder who shared their journey with us. And it's always a pleasure learning. And we have a lot more guests like Fuad coming up on a weekly basis throughout the end of this year. So please tune in. And so, Fuad, because you're from Middle East, how do you say goodbye in Arabic?
Classic Arabic. Ma salama.
Ma salama. All right.
Yes.
And shukran. Thank you.
You're most welcome. Take care.
Okay.